like I'm usually down in here because we won, but I'm complaining about something normally, and so I won't complain about a red zone offense right now. But
how does Mike Leach celebrate a win like that? What are you going to be doing tonight to celebrate a big victory for you in this program?
I'm going to get on a bus, and I'm going to ride for 4 hours to Starkville, Mississippi. Now,
I mean, it wasn't pretty, but when that ball went through the uprights, it was one of the prettiest things I'd ever seen. We just beat LSU on the road. Go Hogs.
Yeah, great team win for us. Always good to keep the Mayor's Cup where it belongs in the city of Columbia. You like that? Could have gone to Columbia.
Does it feel like bad performance in some ways? I mean,
thank you, Trent Grimm from The Independent, right there.
No, but
I mean, that's a win.
I get it, Dan. I get it, Dan. But
you said it exactly, Chip. You answered it. 10-0, undefeated in the SEC. That's where we've gotten. It makes no guarantee for what's going to happen in the future. We got a lot of guys that we've got to try to get better and improve, and we got to tackle better. There's a lot of things we can work on to get better. And you know what I love is the being in that locker room over there beside me. They all know that, and nobody thinks they've arrived. There's things we can work on and get better at, and they'll continue to do it. But tonight, they went through a tough gauntlet in our league and played well.
Oh, welcome in to the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Brennan. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter, and I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Balls on Twitter. What are you up to, you big Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, man, what isn't going on? We got a great interview lined up with Matt Baker, the Tampa Bay Times. We just had the college football playoff rankings came out. We got leaked audio from Kirby. We got coaching rumors. Man, this is a loaded show we got here.
Oh, man, that's what I love about November, Mike, because if your team's sucking, you can start starting rumor mills about other coaches that are successful, you know? So it's that time of the year. You're getting your Christmas list ready.
Absolutely. And before we get to all that, Shane, man, they're not in the SEC yet. They're kind of like the redheaded stepchild, so to speak, of the SEC right now. But the Texas Longhorns, there is a viral question going around here. Steve Sarkisian got asked, and we like to start off with something funny, something weird if we can. This is the weirdest damn question I have ever heard a head coach ask, and I listen to every one of these damn pressers. So let's kick it over to something's going on down there in Austin.
Good morning to you, Coach Sarkisian.
Good morning.
Coach, a couple of years ago, one of my good friends and I were faced with a massive problem we couldn't solve. And in his wisdom, he said, at this point, we need to stop and ask ourselves, what would an extraordinary person do in this situation? And this resonated with me the whole weekend. And I realized that of all the coaches who could be standing at that podium right now in those shoes, you are that extraordinary person. And you have a team of what I call coaching juggernauts. This is not only my opinion, this is a fact. I don't think anyone could dispute this. So my question, as we write, the Sarkisian era story, we're not even done with the first chapter yet. Can you unfold some of the onion of what are you working on? How are you solving this problem? I realize that you might not even know, but I want to steal from Julian Edelman. It's going to be one hell of a story.
Yeah, I think first of all.
All right, Shane, I played this 2 or 3 times. I'm trying to figure out what in the hell is the point. Was there a question in there? And I wonder if this reporter's coming with him to the SEC.
Oh, my God. 2 or 3 times, Mike. Damn, I could barely make it through the questions. I mean, the favorite comment I saw in this one was like, I would love to see them ask Nick Saban this question. Golly, this guy, man, he practiced this shit in the mirror, didn't he? He was like, this is my time, man. Mom, turn on this channel because I'm going to be on it, man. Oh, my God. What are we doing down there? This guy's going to get a lot. I cannot wait to see him at SEC Media Days. They're going to eat this dude's lunch. I can't believe Sarkisian just sat there, and answered just you own the presser, man. Timeout. Season's not going as well as we want, but damn, there's a reason you're the first-year coach there, and that's because you don't have the roster. So don't panic. There's a lot of Bama fans that'd love to have Sarkisian back there at OC, man. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, without a doubt. And apparently he's got the greatest staff assembled ever to man, according to this man. You know what?
God, you remember 2 years ago when no idiot, get out of here.
Well, sticking to that theme, Shane, Big 12 coming to the SEC. Latest rumor on the LSU coaching search is old Lincoln Riley, the Oklahoma coach. That has been kind of percolating for a little while. I'm honest. So, you know, there's rumors that the LSU crew came down there and visited them. I don't know if you can really get away with coming to Norman. I'm sure somebody would have spotted something, but apparently Lincoln was, you know, they just lost the game to Baylor. Maybe there's some distractions. He canceled or missed some press availability that he's never missed before. And then here this week, he was asked about the rumors, the LSU speculation. Let's kick it over to Lincoln Riley. Gave kind of a no answer here.
A lot of speculation in recent days connecting you with the LSU job or talk around that. Have you or any of your representatives had contact with them, and just what's that like to handle that in the middle of the season?
It's nothing to handle, I mean, it's pretty easy. I coach the University of Oklahoma football team, and you guys know me. You know how I feel about this place and this program. So we've all been down this road many times before. You guys know where I stand on that, and that hadn't changed.
All right, Shane, so we've been down this road. What the hell does that mean? Does that mean yes? Does that mean no? I don't know. But, let's give a little bit more, we're not just trying to pass along message board rumors, because ESPN analyst Tom Luganbill, he has been on several radio shows this week and asked about this, and he thinks that Lincoln Riley is leaving Oklahoma for LSU. Now, he's not reporting that per se, but he just, I don't know, you have to seek that interview out if you're really interested. But basically, his point being is he thinks there's something going on behind the scenes, Shane. And I think at the end of the day, it would make sense, because while Lincoln Riley, I believe they've won 6 Big 12 titles in a row. They've been to, I think, 3 college football playoffs in a row. They've got that thing rolling. But you bring Oklahoma into the SEC, Shane, you can't win a national championship at Oklahoma currently. Is it realistic that you're going to be able to beat Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas A&M? You may be able to compete with those teams, every couple of years, but I just don't know if Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma, they've got the roster right now to win in the SEC at an elite level, at a level those fans expect. Whereas I think if you jump to LSU, you're getting a better roster. You're getting a better recruiting landscape. You're getting, you're the only show in town in a state that I believe per capita produces more NFL players than anybody in the country. So I don't know, Shane. What do you think about that? LSU a better job than Oklahoma? I say yes.
Oh, Mike, I think that's a loaded question, man. It's one of those that you think about it, okay? Let's say we move these guys over. We move Texas in. We move Oklahoma in. It's like you said, they're the big dogs right now in their conference, but when they come over here, they're not. Right. There's a lot of big dogs sitting over here, maybe even bigger if you ask me. Like you said, you mentioned Alabama. You look at Georgia, the talent. It's just the pure talent. I mean, look at the roster that Oklahoma has now. Most of that talent came from the South, So, yeah, I think that's the key is, and I don't like to speculate because I also heard, Heupel's leaving Tennessee for Oklahoma, and I'm like, what the hell? Did they fire him up there? No, they still got Lincoln. And And Oklahoma has a ton of money. Oklahoma has a presence that they are a blue chip team, man. I don't think they're going to struggle as much as some folks think they will when they come in the SEC, because they have established themselves as a good football team.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, when you look at that precious record that he's carrying up there, you're not going to be able to do that in the SEC. You're going to have spectacular teams. So right now you got a good roster. What does it look like 4 or 5 years from now? If I'm a guy that's recruiting, just think about when we're kids and we're playing NCAA, man. Where did you go? You went to a Texas team. You went to a Florida team. You went to a Georgia team. You went to a Louisiana team, somewhere where the talent is, because you're always going to – if you could protect your borders, you're going to have a good roster down there at LSU. You're not in Oklahoma, Mike. So I'm with you. I'm going where the talent is. Now, I don't – for years past, they've been able to get the talent in Oklahoma. I think it changes a little bit when you get on over here to the SEC, Mike.
Yeah, and maybe I should clarify, because I'm not sitting here trying to sound like a fool and say Oklahoma's like some G5 program and they can never compete. But I just think when they get into the SEC, just imagine their schedule. Let's say they play A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. I mean, I just don't think their lines of scrimmage are going to hold up right away. Now, I think they could probably get there in 2 or 3 years, the way they're playing and the way they recruit and the prestige of that program. But I think at LSU, you got that right now. Even though they're struggling, the talent is there. And I think that's how these coaches got to look at it, man, because even a place like, hell, we're seeing it with Sarkisian. You have one down year. Not saying they'd run Lincoln Riley off, but you have 2 bad years, 3 bad years in the SEC. They will run your ass off. Whereas
Coach O, he just won a national championship.
Right. If you go to LSU and maybe it takes you a year to get off the ground, but by year 2, I think you can have an elite squad, and given the talent they have, hell, maybe you can do it right away. We're seeing Josh Heupel turned it right around. Sam Pittman turned his program right around. Lane Kiffin turned his program right around. It can be done if you got the talent. And I think that's what makes LSU such an attractive job for all these coaches.
That's why they're storied programs, Mike. That's why Georgia and Florida and LSU and all these teams, they stay at the top. It's not because they've had great coaches, which they have. They've had some really great coaches come through there.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes with the talent. And man, there's so much. The Southeast is just loaded with players in the NFL, blue chip talent, and that's never going to change, Mike. I don't see it changing anytime soon. And so if you can and you have an opportunity to coach at one of those programs, you're nuts if you don't do it, because you pretty much you control your own destiny when you're down at programs like that. You got to get the right coaches. You got to get the right players in there, because you could see, man, you get the wrong staff. Coach O, and I think he's a prime example. You got a good staff. A lot of them got poached and went to the NFL, and then you have a bad staff, and look, everybody starts pointing fingers at you and saying you're a bad coach. So I think there's a lot of factors, but Lincoln Riley, one of the things he's got is the ability to recruit coaching. I think that's key for him too. So wherever he goes, he's going to be successful. And if he stays in Oklahoma, I still think he's going to be successful. I just think he I don't know. I mean, it's a dream list. I think LSU would love to have him, but Oklahoma, man, they got some deep pockets, and they're going to do everything they can to keep him.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shane, let's move it along here. We got a lot to get to, and we just had some breaking news here, kind of sort of from Athens. So let's kick it on down there real quick where, man, if you're Georgia, you probably don't want this audio leaking out, but the response has been incredible here. Fans are loving it. Everybody's loving it outside of Gainesville, of course. But if you haven't heard a little bit of a snippet here, it's a little hard to hear. I'll turn it up. But some leaked audio. This is allegedly from Kirby Smart during halftime of the Florida game, and he holds nothing back on wanting to whip them Gators here in Jacksonville.
And that being said, if you got kiddos in the car, you may want to fast forward about 90 seconds here.
I still remember like yesterday walking out of this bitch at the half. The look and the feeling I had, looking at Tyson, looking at Stokes, looking at those guys. You know what, guys? This is our fucking year. This is our fucking year. We do it how we play. It's 0 to fucking 0, and you make them never want to play again. All that shit they're talking, I love it, Jamar. You didn't say shit. You don't say shit to them. You just laugh and point at the scoreboard. Let me get a picture, JD, pointing at the fucking scoreboard. Don't say shit to their undisciplined ass, because we are. We are disciplined. And our ass still don't take the fucking shit out of them. Physically, I want to break them. I'm talking about fucking break these bitches on defense and offense. Let's go.
All right, Shane, I don't know about you, man, but I'm ready to run through a damn brick wall for old Kirby. How about you?
Oh, my God. I love it, Mike. I absolutely love this. I mean, obviously, whoever this poor kid that got recording here, you know, he's running right now. But I'm telling you, Mike, this is what we've been saying about the Georgia Bulldogs, and it's a mirror from the head coach. He knows what this roster is. He knows what this team's about, and he wants to go out there, and he's getting these boys fired up. And why not, man? This is their year. Go out there, and he doesn't want to beat them, man. He wants to kill them. He wants to crush them. He doesn't want to. That's why we've not heard anything coming into the Tennessee game, anything coming into the Florida game. There was no talk coming out of Athens. It's all being kept until this point in the locker room. But man, you're a head ball coach coming out here, man. I'd run through a wall for him.
Yeah, without a doubt, Shane. And just to add a little more fuel to that Georgia steam right here. Let's kick it over to Kirby real quick. Gives a positive update on George Pickens and running back Kendall Milton. Sounds like, obviously, Milton, they expect him to be possibly good for the Georgia Tech game, which is great news. And no specific timeline here for George Pickens, but if they get him at all this year, this will be fantastic news for the Georgia Bulldogs, and especially, of course, that receiving core.
Yeah, Kirby, just wanted to ask for a quick injury update on Kendall Milton. I noticed you didn't include him in yesterday's update there. And along the lines of Xavier Truss, how has he looked in practice this week?
Kendall is back running, which is good. I think he got up to 10 to 15 miles an hour yesterday, not truly practicing with us. He's cutting and running straight line. Doubtful for this week that we would get him back, but optimistic that we would get him back for Georgia Tech. Just kind of the timeline we've had since the injury. So certainly hopeful we can get him back in time for Tech.
Kirby, last week you told us about, George getting some work with the scouts. So I wanted to see if there was anything new with him this week, if there's any step forward for him in terms of his progression back from that injury.
Well, we're doing a lot of good on good, meaning we're practicing less against the scouts this week and more against ourselves and giving each other good looks. So he's been going against our one defense some. We do 7-on-7. He gets rid of it. He's really doing the same thing he did last week, if that's what you're asking. So, yeah, he's doing very similar things, just probably more of it in terms of more reps and more volume, picking that volume up. He's still in a non-contact jersey and practicing with us.
All right, Shane, hey, we got to move this thing along here. And speaking of Georgia, the playoff rankings just came out here, fresh off the presses. No surprise, Georgia Bulldogs, number 1, as they have been all season long. Number 2, Alabama, no change there. Now here we get some risers here, Shane. Ole Miss, number 12, up 3 spots.
Okay. I see you.
Texas A&M, 16. They fell 5 after losing to Ole Miss. Arkansas, 21. They're up 4 spots.
Okay.
And then number 25, Mississippi State. They were not ranked last week, but after that big comeback against Auburn. So here we got almost the entire SEC West shade outside of Auburn and Mississippi State ranked. And then we got Georgia once again at number 1. But there's your latest playoff ranking with the SEC teams.
Wait, who's not ranked? Auburn and
LSU.
Okay, I thought you said Mississippi. So Mississippi State's on there.
Number 25, Mississippi State.
25? Yeah. Damn. What a division, man. Come on over, Lincoln. You're going to love it over there.
And look, this is just how dumb. Like, why is Auburn not ranked? Because they lost to number 25, number 16, number 1. Like, get them out of here. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Put them in there. You know, the way LSU's playing, Arkansas's got me convinced they're a top 10 team here. So throw LSU in there. Why not? You might as well have the whole damn division ranked.
Oh, I love it, man. I love it.
All right, hey, next, Shane, I don't want to hold this off any longer here. We got a terrific interview with Matt Baker of the Tampa Bay Times. Went on a little deep dive here with Dan Mullen and the state of the Gators. Obviously, the hottest topic here in the SEC, will Dan Mullen return? And Matt, not 100% sure, just like the rest of us. So let's kick it over to our interview with Matt Baker of the Tampa Bay Times. All right, we're pleased to be joined by Matt Baker, and he is a reporter for the Tampa Bay Times. He votes in the AP Top 25 poll and the Heisman Trophy poll. He's a Heisman voter there, and he covers Florida and Florida State, and he's a must-follow at MBakerTBTimes on Twitter. Matt, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and you just, over there at the Tampa Bay Times, you just put out an article, very interesting, on the fact that we all know that if Dan Mullen is in fact going to return next season, he's going to have to do it with a reworked staff. How does that kind of play out based on the research that you've done at a lot of big-time programs that have kind of faced similar situations?
Yeah, I was curious, first of all, I don't know that Mullen will be back, right? Like, I don't think anybody has a great idea right now. If I had to guess, I would lean toward no, but I also don't know that it's decided yet either. So I think the next couple of weeks will really certainly have a role in what happens. But I just wanted to look and see if Dan is indeed the coach for the Gators next year. Obviously, he fired defensive coordinator Todd Grantham and his offensive line coach John Hevesy. So there's some sort of a shakeup that would happen, and who knows what else would happen either. So I just wanted to look at some historical comps to see, like, what are the odds it actually works? Because in my head, it seems like most of the time it does. There are some success stories. A lot of Florida fans have pointed to Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, who went through a 4-8 season, fired the defensive coordinator, changed half the staff, and then they came back. They win 10 games and then make the playoffs twice in 3 years. And fully know we'll make it again this year. Michigan this past offseason had a bunch of staff shakeups. They went younger overall on staff. I think just about every position, I think, is under 45 or something like that. And obviously right now, as we sit here, they're in the playoff picture. But there's a lot of negatives as well, right? Ron Zook and Will Muschamp changed coordinators before their last season. Charlie Strong, Tom Herman at Texas made a bunch of shakeups before their last season didn't work. USC changed coordinators going into the final 2 years of Clay Helton. That didn't work. So it looks to me like this is not if the Gators are looking to say, okay, what are the odds Dan Mullen, and if we give him a year 5, what are the odds it works out with this new staff, that whatever it's going to be? I would lean toward it's more likely that it does not work out and they turn around than that it does.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, the Gators traveling to Missouri this weekend. That may not even be, that big of a topic right now in Gainesville because it's just so Dan Mullen-centric in the future there. But, of course, if you think to last season, this was the Darth Vader game. There was the brawl last season. And, both coaches are saying the right things this week. Let's hope there's no animosity that bleeds over to this game. But I'm not even talking about the animosity. I'm thinking more of Missouri, being kind of disrespected in that game. Now they're fighting for their bowl lives. If they can beat the Florida Gators, they punch their ticket to the postseason. How dangerous of a matchup do you think this is for the Gators, taking all that into consideration and considering just how they basically no-showed for half the game against Samford?
I think this is a very dangerous matchup. Let's be real. If Florida had trouble beating Samford and they couldn't beat South Carolina, I mean, it's always kind of risky to start looking at transitive property, right? Who did you lose to and who did they beat and all that stuff. But look, Missouri just beat the South Carolina team that thumped the Gators a couple weeks ago. So if you go by that, it certainly is a possibility. Missouri can run the ball pretty decently, and it certainly has here lately. Florida can't stop the run at all. So I think this is a very dangerous matchup for the Gators. I mean, if they struggled in the first half, literally the worst first half defensively in the history of the Gators program, if they did that against Samford, what are they going to do against Eli Drinkwitz, who I think is a very competent head coach and a good running back there as well. So I look at that and see I see trouble, and I certainly see trouble the next week, even if Florida does beat Missouri. I look ahead to the Florida State game, and I see all sorts of warning signs going off for the Gators.
Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, Matt, I've been doing this long enough. None of these coaching firings and hirings, none of it really surprises me anymore. But I'm sitting here scratching my head trying to think of a coach that has taken such a perception hit as Dan Mullen has in the last 12 months, because I considered him one of the best coaches in all of college football. And yet this season, it's far more often seems like he's being outcoached or his team's making so many mistakes. Can you recall a coach that has taken a perception hit this quickly in roughly 12-month span?
Not off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I mean, Ed Orgeron and Gene Chizik had very spectacular falls from higher highs to arguably lower lows or comparable lows. Mm-hmm. But that played out a little bit longer, and there were questions about both of them heading into, and I think a lot of people realized that they kind of caught lightning in a bottle with Cam and then with the Joes at LSU. This is different because Dan had a track record, right? He did a fantastic job at Mississippi State, second winningest coach in the history of that program. No, they did not win championships and all that stuff, but look, you have to look at what he did where he was. And he had one of the most, the best runs in Mississippi State history. It took him to number one in the country, for goodness sakes. So that was a remarkable job, and he earned all the respect that he got from that. And his first two seasons, and 3/4 or 2/3 of his third season in Gainesville, he did well. I mean, look, he went to 2 New Year's Six Bowls and won those in the first 2 years, 21 wins. Then things look like they're going the right way in year 3 as well, and until the LSU game. And then it was just one thing after another. Obviously, the on-field stuff was most problematic with literally the worst defense since at least World War II that they had last year, and things not getting much better this year. In some cases, regressing. You look at some of the head-scratching losses, and really just the last couple of weeks. Like you can go through just about all of Mullen's losses at Florida and kind of rationalize it one way or another. They were close with Alabama both times, and the LSU, they lost on a guy throwing a shoe and a 50-yard field goal. But that's kind of fluky. And the block kick against Kentucky, and they lost to a great Georgia team that's destroying everybody because they collapsed in the last 3 minutes of the first half. And then you get to South Carolina. There's no excuse for that. None. Zero. A first-year coach at a middling SEC East program led by a third-string quarterback. There's no excuse for that. Zero. And then you look at the first half against Samford, and Dan wanted to kind of tout how the Gators came back from the 42-28 deficit and outscored them 42-10 the rest of the way, and good on them, I guess. But that first half was awful, and there's no excuse for it. Zero. None. And so I'm like you. I've been trying to kind of contextualize this whole thing and how quickly it all fell apart. Like I've been trying to point to a moment or a decision or something like that. But look, a program of Florida's caliber does not get to be this bad based on one thing. It's a confluence of events and decisions, and recruiting and who they made us, who they hired on their staff and kept on their staff, and game day decisions and all that stuff that combine to have them where they are right now, where a coach that, like you said, a lot of people, myself included, consider to be one of the best in the game, is now fighting for his job heading into the final two weeks, if that's even the right way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Beyond the question of whether Dan Mullen, whether he's let go or whether he returns. In my opinion, I'm just curious to know what you think. Considering the struggles of Miami and Florida State in recent seasons, is Dan Mullen's greatest failure the fact that he did not get more momentum in that state? Because I'm sitting here wondering why the Gators just don't dominate, in recruiting and just like I said, I mean, Florida State and Miami are kind of in shambles, whereas he's got, I think, 3 top 10 finishes on the field at least, and there's just doesn't seem to be any momentum from that.
There's a lot of things that have gone wrong here, and that's one of them. And really, look, if I'm coming up with a list of why Florida's in this situation, recruiting is at or near the top of it. Absolutely, there's no question. I mean, I looked at the Georgia game, to some degree Alabama as well, but Georgia in particular looked like a team with a bunch of 5 stars playing a team with a bunch of 3 and 4 stars, because lo and behold, that's what it was. And you can kind of look at the way, that Mullen recruited the first couple of years. They weren't terrible, but it wasn't great either. Mm-hmm. You kind of kept looking and waiting for a breakthrough with recruiting, and it didn't come, and it hasn't come. As we sit here today, Florida's got the number 23 class in 2022. 13 commits, 7 of them are 4 stars, 6 are 3 stars. That's behind Florida State. Florida State right now has a 13 class, 2 5 stars, including Travis Hunter, who is the best prospect in the country, or one of them. That I don't understand it. It's not like, Florida. I think Florida fans think that when their new football training center opens here next year, that's going to be a big boost in recruiting. And yeah, I think it might be. But Florida State doesn't have anything like that. Florida State's facilities, by and large, are not as good as what the Gators have. So you can look at Florida's recruiting situation and maybe you blame it on facilities, but that's not stopping Mike Norvell at Florida State. Norvell was behind the 8 ball just in terms of, he was an outsider. He's not from the state of Florida. It's not like he had a ton of contacts. And then early in his tenure, COVID hits. He can't do any obviously recruiting gets shut down. So kind of his plans to go out and see and be seen, that can't happen. It's not like Dan's in that situation. So why is Florida State having a better class right now than the Gators? That to me is one of the most damning indictments here, where, like you said, the state of Florida, I mean, this is probably the worst year the state has had since Miami and Florida State started to become Miami and Florida State. Mm-hmm. And the Gators should have been in position to capitalize on that in recruiting, and they haven't. And that's an indictment on the staff and what they've done, or more accurately, what they have not done.
Do you have any idea who Dan Mullen may be looking at to be his next defensive coordinator, or is that something that he's probably not even pursued too heavily at this point?
I'm sure he has a list. He always does. All coaches do. And I mean, I think he at least had to think about getting rid of Todd Grantham at the end of last year. But look, that's a very good question. And I presume that should be something that the Gators brass thinks about as they figure out whether Dan deserves a 5th year. But he's got to get to the point where he's in position to hire a defensive coordinator, right? And I don't know that he is. You look at what's happened the last couple of weeks. There are rumblings that obviously the program has not clicked at the level it needs to, right? I mean, the expectation is to compete for championships, and he has not done that. I shouldn't say that, because he did get them 6 points away from Bama, but he hasn't clicked at an elite level yet. And some people have been unhappy, certainly with some of the stuff he did on the field and off the field last year. NCAA probation and penalties, that did not help. So there were rumblings that if he lost to LSU, that'd be hard for him to come back from. And he did. Mm-hmm. And then he gets destroyed by Georgia. And I remember thinking, I don't know if he comes back from this. And then he loses at South Carolina by 23. And I remember thinking, I don't know how he comes back from this. And then he gives up 42 points at home to Stanford. And I remember thinking, I don't know how he comes back from this. So that's 4 games in a row that you're like, this is not good. This is not good. This is not good. This is not good. And that's kind of where he is right now. So it's a good question in terms of who might he hire as defensive coordinator. Manny Diaz in the state might be looking for a job here in a couple weeks for all we know. And he worked with Dan at Mississippi State. So there's going to be options available. And I think Florida would be able to get a good one. I mean, I understand the concern some Gator fans have in terms of what great defensive coordinator would want to hitch your wagon to an embattled head coach, but Florida will pay up. These things always work out. They're not going to get somebody, some schmuck off the street. They will get a good coach if that's the way it works out. But that is a very big if right now.
Any idea what Anthony Richardson will do? And if I have no idea if he's a big Dan Mullen fan or not, but Dan Mullen's fate, does that help or hurt the Gators when it comes to retaining Anthony Richardson?
I'm not sure if it helps or hurts. It would depend on who the new coach is. I mean, Anthony's a Gainesville guy. He went to high school in Gainesville. The Gator brand, that school, that means something to him. And I think that's something that probably goes beyond who the head coach is. Now, that said, Dan has a track record in producing quarterbacks and developing them into elite guys. We don't have to go through all the list, the Dax and Alex Smith and Tim Tebow and Kyle Trask to the Heisman ceremony, all that stuff. He's done a fantastic job over his career, and I'm sure Anthony Richardson knows that, and that's the reason why he wanted to come. But I think it would just depend on what happens next if the Gators do go in a different direction. I would expect, again, we're just talking ifs here, but I would expect the Gators' next coach, whenever that happens, to be an offensive guy. I think Florida's learned that after the Will Muschamp debacle. They need offense. That's the way they're going to have to win. So we would see what happens with that. But yeah, Anthony Richardson's fate is one of the many unanswered questions we have right now circling around the Gators, starting with Dan and working all the way down.
All right, Matt, I really appreciate all your time. I just got one quick question for you. I noted you're a Heisman voter there, and I know the rules, you're not allowed to say who you're going to vote for, so I'm not asking you that. But is this the toughest year you can recall trying to figure out who's going to win the Heisman? And is there a candidate or two that you may be leaning towards, or are you still kind of waiting for the full season to play out?
I'm waiting for the full season to play out, and that's not me trying to be political. That's just the God's honest truth. I mean, I vote for, I'm a member of the Football Writers Association of America, so they have an All-American team, and there's all sorts of awards. And before I hopped on here, I filled out a couple ballots for various awards. It makes me sound way more important than I am, but that's what I've been spending some of the afternoon on. And I don't like doing it now because the season's not over. Right. Like, I don't know whether I think in my heart of hearts Kenny Pickett had a better season this year than C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. The season's not over. Let's see what happens here. I don't know whether I think Kenneth Walker deserves to be on the Heisman ballot over Kobe Dean or Jordan Davis or Anderson at Bama. I don't know yet. It hasn't happened. So when I watch the season, I'm always kind of thinking in the back of my head, who am I going to vote for Heisman? Because it's something I take seriously. It's a cool responsibility. I mean, shoot, I got married. It'll be 10 years ago next month, and the groom's cake at my wedding was the Heisman Trophy. It was shaped like the Heisman.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was fantastic. It was chocolate mint. It was delicious. So to have this responsibility is one I take seriously. So as I'm watching the season, I kind of taking mental notes in my head, and then what I'll do is the Monday after the conference championship games, I come up with a short list. Like I tell my boss, don't bug me. This is what I'm doing today. I come up with a short list, 8 to 12, 15 names, depending on the year, and I will go through one by one. And this guy, let's look at the numbers. Let's dive in. How did he do in the big games? How did he do in the blowout? Look at the highlights, all that stuff, to come up with who I think is the top three, and then I'll once the winner is announced on that Saturday night, I'll publish my explainer on TampaBay.com so people can see why. Even if they disagree with me, they can at least understand why I made the decision I made. Because I've made some that people didn't agree with. I mean, in 2015, I had Dalvin Cook #1 from Florida State. I watched him, Derrick Henry, and Leonard Fournette all play a very good Gators defense in back-to-back weeks. Of the three, I thought Dalvin Cook was the best. So I'm fine going against the grain, but I just have to. I want to make sure that you understand why I did what I did, even if you disagree.
All right, he's Matt Baker, Tampa Bay Times reporter And again, his Twitter handle at mbakertbtimes. Matt, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, Shane. So I just want to say thanks again to Matt for joining the show. Really appreciate him giving us all the time he did and giving us some insight into them Florida Gators. And speaking of those Gators, Shane, they're playing a huge game here on the road this weekend against the Missouri Tigers. Both teams will win away from punching their ticket to the postseason. So this is going to be one where both teams obviously are going to be fighting hard to get that win. But if you think back to this time last year, Shane, you remember Florida and Missouri, they had themselves a little dust-up, a little mini brawl here on the field. This was the game where Dan Mullen, and this was after that brawl, he came out with the Darth Vader costume. And Eli Drinkwitz was not too happy about that. And, you know, taking all that into consideration, considering how Florida basically didn't show up against South Carolina and got beat. They didn't show up for the first half of Samford and were getting beat. How motivated do you think they are to go up here to face a team that they think they'll probably just beat the brakes off, just like the rest of these teams? Whereas on the flip side, you got a Missouri Tigers that were dead, dead in the water here a couple weeks ago. Now they've got life. They just dominated the South Carolina Gamecocks, a South Carolina team that just beat Florida. Yeah. And they got completely disrespected, I think, by the Gators last season. So I don't know, Shane. I think the Gators might be getting in a little bit of a buzzsaw here.
Could be, Mike. I mean, for the longest time, we gave Mizzou a hard time about their defense, saying that they may be the worst defense in the SEC. And I don't know, Mike, the last 3 weeks, it looks like the Florida Gators, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't know what the over-under on this thing is, but I'm expecting a shit ton of points in this game. And, I will say there was a couple things after the game. I think the biggest thing was the video leak of the locker room, because you just don't know. You don't know how these kids are acting. If they're, we've all been part of a team, and you go home and it's just like, was it a big game? Was everybody bringing everything they could to this moment? And you look at what Florida Gators have been going through, I always felt like they weren't, man. I always felt like that maybe this locker room's disconnected. Maybe they just, maybe we should hit the portal because we ain't going to have a coach next year. But, when you see that and them taking in Coach Mullen there after the game, that gave me a little bit of a life. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Now, on the flip side of the coin, you look at Mizzou, they had the tough game against Georgia. They beat South Carolina. They're starting to gain a little bit of confidence, Mike, and I think that's exactly what they need. And they're getting healthy. So you put all those pieces together, we're going to have a hell of a matchup here. So one of these teams got to walk away, but I think if you're ever going to beat the Florida Gators, this is your best shot.
Now, let me ask you this real quick, Shane. If I had to ask, one player that's kind of peaking at the right time, maybe the hottest player in this matchup, I think you'd have to say Tyler Beatty, who just had another 200-yard performance. And I don't know if you keep asking him to carry the team here, but if he's able to do that, again, I think the Gators could be in trouble. But I see what you're saying. Maybe they just needed to get that win. I think it had been about a month since the Gators got themselves a win. They got it last week, so maybe that gives them some juice. But I don't know about you, Shane. I'd rather be on the team with Tyler Beatty come Saturday.
Well, it's tough not to, Mike. I mean, I saw something come out. I want to give them credit, but I can't remember who said it. But there was like three running backs that have ever had 4 200-yard games. And, one of them was Leonard Fournette and the other one was Derrick Henry. I mean, that's thinking about the company you're with.
Right.
So Derrick Beatty is one of those guys that has – he's super talented, man. And what sucks is I don't think he gets enough recognition for how good he really is. And that's why we talk about things like the Heisman and stuff like that. There's some players that literally are the team, and that's what Beatty has been for the Mizzou Tigers, man. He's literally their team. And so I'm saying it right now, throw the record books out. He's my Heisman front runner.
Yeah, and Eli Drinkwitz right here, Shay, will play the clip. He asks him, how valuable is Tyler Beatty to this team? He says, 5 wins valuable.
Last year, things got heated in this game. There's something just before halftime. How do you make sure there's no spillover?
Yeah, I don't see. That was kind of something that I think certain things got out of control, but I don't think it started as anything with the two teams, and I think it was something that maybe got a couple people probably made it worse than it needed to be. That were in the middle of it, and so to be honest with you, I don't see how that would even roll into this game. To be honest with you, I don't even think about it.
Are you and Drinkwitz tight, close?
Yeah.
Have you even talked to him since last year here?
Oh yeah, a bunch. Oh
Okay.
yeah. I've known him I've known him a
SC.
long time.
He took a little shot at you guys at SC Media Days, so.
Which one? I mean
The one about he's praying for snow. You're going to complain about. You'll be able to complain about the weather and everything anyway.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, he's got some personality. He has some funny little one-liner stuff and that. I've known him since. What was it? I think the first time I met him was when he was like a student assistant or something for Gus Malzahn when he was coaching in high school when I was there recruiting. So he reminds me of that. So. No, I got a lot of respect for him. Good guy, and I think there's. I didn't come out with any needling of him, but I think if I did, they would know it's all in good fun.
Dan, one of the things that's been so obvious this year, these glaring inconsistencies. You know, you have a bad first quarter against Alabama, then you dominate 3. Your defense shows at Kentucky, and the offense gives game away, and on and on. It's been like a roller coaster ride. How frustrating is that, and how do you deal with solving that problem?
Well, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you look at it. There was a time it was a 42-28 we were losing in that game on Saturday, and then we outscored them 42-10. You know, from that point forward, and you know. You wonder, I think there's a couple things. You can look at it and you can be really disappointed maybe at times. Imagine if we played at our high level every snap throughout the season. How good could we be? You also look, or maybe we're not as good, but all of a sudden things aren't going well, and we've had mental toughness to be able to go recover from it at certain times. You know, and I think there's all kinds of little things that go. Obviously, as a coach, you know, and you look at your team. You want to go out. I mean, I want to turn on the film, and you want to everybody performs at the highest of levels, perfect assignment, perfect technique, perfect execution, and making plays on every snap of the game. You know, and at the end of the game, every time we have the ball, we average 14 yards a play, and we've scored every possession, and they have -4 yards and went 3 and out every possession, right? With 2 blocked punts and a kick returned for a touchdown. You know, I mean, obviously that's probably unrealistic, but in your mind, you want to see your team perform at the extreme highest level of all times. But that's the challenge that we have, and it is frustrating. You want to see us, but I want to see the consistency of performance. There's times to me where I thought we've had great mental resolve to come back from tough situations to give ourselves opportunity to win. And maybe it wasn't we were terrible. We just had great mental resolve to come back. There's other times where, boy, we've been really bad, and I wish we could have played better and consistently throughout the year. So I think there's a little bit of both.
Where are you at as far as picking your starting quarterback? And is that a process that goes through the week, or you already know what you're going to do?
No, we're going to have great practice today. We're going to compete today and practice today and tomorrow and see where we're at and see who gives us the best chance to win.
Is it similar to last week where you can't have 3 separate plans?
I don't know if it's fair to say that. I think we, you know, no different than, you know, after a game early in the season where we said, hey, competition brings out the best in everybody. And so we're going to compete, and we'll see where it goes.
When you have a week like this where you have that, you know, 6 win on the line and bowl game stuff, is that something that you lean into?
No.
Do you avoid that? How do you kind of navigate that?
You know, I think it's important for us to focus on being 1-0. And then at the end of the season, you stack up how many wins you have and determine where you go. But there doesn't need to be any more external pressure because this game determines whether or not we go to a bowl game. If we're not motivated to go play for our seniors, if we're not motivated to play at home, how much motivation do you need? So I'm not leaning into that at all, really.
How valuable has he been in just his consistency, the way he bounces off tackles, yards after the initial contact? I mean, the way is so consistent.
Well, I think he's been 5 wins valuable. I don't know that we have 5 wins if it's not for Tyler Beatty. And you think about the Central Michigan game and the fourth quarter when he's able to break the long run and set us up to win the game. And again, you get to the Vanderbilt game where they've cut it down to 3 and hand him the ball and he goes 78 yards. And then, again, misplays in the fourth quarter that allow the game to get a lot closer than it needed to be. And then, Tyler is able to run us down the field and we're able to take a knee. So, I think all those plays are really definitive of how much impact.
I feel something's going to be made about how you view Florida, especially maybe their head coach and everything happened at halftime last year. But when you look back on last year's game and maybe the rivalry between you and Florida, what are your thoughts on how kind of the state of that rivalry?
I think it's a good rivalry. I think we're 5-5, Missouri versus Florida. Last year was last year. I think we've put that to bed. Both teams issued statements following the game, and I don't think there's anything really to add to that. I think Coach Mullen's a good football coach. Obviously, he's got a really sharp offensive mind and has been very good for a long time on the offensive side of the ball. I think he's been a head coach in this league for 13 years, which is saying a lot considering there's been several coaches that only lasted 2. And so I think, obviously I have a lot of respect for how he's handled himself as a head football coach and the way he's developed programs. And so, to me, there's nothing there. We made statements last season, and I'll let those speak for themselves. I made a joke this summer about wanting snow, and apparently the snow gods aren't going to cooperate. So I'll keep any more wisecracks to myself.
All right, next game, Shane, I wanted to ask you about Alabama at home this week playing an Arkansas team on the rise, number 21 in the new playoff poll. Alabama's won 13 in a row in this series, but I think that if anything, the last couple of weeks has shown us that Alabama, I just don't think they're on top of their game right now. Whereas, yes, they've had a terrific streak here against the Razorbacks, but I think you could argue this is the best Arkansas team of that entire streak. Coming into Tuscaloosa, going on the road will be incredibly tough, but Arkansas does have some pieces like Treylon Burks. He's going to be a nightmare. KJ Jefferson is playing. He's the reason they won that LSU game, just the plays he was able to make. And I know this is a very, very tough ask, but if Arkansas can win the ground game, because that's what LSU did, that's what Florida did, and those were some dogfights there that Alabama found themselves in, is there any path you see to the Razorbacks pulling off a stunning upset? And, of course, I'm not asking you to pick the game right here, but I don't know, Shane. I just think this is going to be the most competitive Arkansas-Alabama game we have seen in a number of years. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and 2 words, Mike, and this is one of Nick Saban's famous quotes is rat poison. Mm-hmm. And if you turn on anything, man, I will say this, got to go over to my mother-in-law's today. We celebrated her birthday. She's been on this earth for more than 70 years. It was a great experience, but in the background there at that house, they had the old Paul Feinbaum going. And I swear, for 20 minutes, they just talked about the Georgia-Alabama matchup in the SEC championship. Mm-hmm. That's all that's going on. That's all that's in their minds. It's the rat poison right now. That's what hurts, I think, Alabama is, hey, we've already made it. We're going to the SEC championship. Win that game, we're in the college football playoffs. Win a couple, we're national champs again. I think the problem with Alabama is sometimes they have a tendency to look forward. I think they did it with Tennessee. I think they came prepared with Ole Miss. Right. Everybody said Ole Miss is going to give them a fit, and you saw Alabama stepped on them. Texas A&M, man, they're really struggling. They overlooked them. It was a close game, and then they end up losing it. So you look at some of these games. The LSU, that's another one, man. Just another one that they were supposed to dominate. They overlooked it. Next thing you know, it's a one-possession game. That's what scares me about Alabama is sometimes they They just think they deserve a win. They just don't come out hitting on all cylinders like they should. And you cannot do that with the Arkansas Razorbacks, man. You got Arkansas that is coming off a huge win with the LSU that got the Golden Boot. Man, momentum's at an all-time high right now. These guys are ready. They're ready to play Alabama. They think they've played good teams, man. They've played Georgia. They've played Ole Miss. They've played good teams. So they're not afraid to go against, of course, I picked two that they lost. I guess maybe those aren't the best examples, but, Alabama isn't any better than Georgia. You know what I'm saying? So the nervousness, I think, is off. You've already lost the games. You have nothing to lose. Arkansas has nothing to lose. They're expected to lose this game, and I think that's the biggest thing. You got somebody that has nothing to lose. Those are the ones you should be scared of. And here you got Alabama already thinking about SEC championship. So, yeah, I think that's my biggest concern for Crimson Tide is just overlooking the game.
Yeah, and you asked me last time about the injuries to Alabama. Roydale Williams, running back, out. They haven't given a specific timeline, but they say he's out for a significant amount of time, so that's terrible. Jace McClellan, he's already out for the year, I do believe they've announced. So that makes it sound like it's going to be Trey Sanders time, Shane. We've been waiting for Trey Sanders to break out, and that's Alabama for you. You're down to your third stringer. Oh no, what are you going to do? Oh yeah, he was number 1 overall running back. He's the next Alvin Kamara. So we'll see if Trey Sanders he had a good performance last week, but that was against New Mexico State. Let's see what he can do against Arkansas. And one player they do got, Shane, no one else got someone as good as old Will Anderson, the outside linebacker. He's picking up Heisman buzz, 11 sacks, 19 tackles for loss, 58 tackles. He is someone Nick Saban and Sam Pittman had to talk about in their weekly pressers because he's just that damn good.
With Will Anderson, how does a player like that with a skill set has changed the way an offensive team game plans or schemes they're blocking?
Yeah, well, I think Will's done an outstanding job. He's a good player. He plays hard. I think the important thing is that you have complementary players that if they do try to scheme him, that other players can, take up the slack and, give you pressure in other areas, which I think some of our players have done a good job of. So, yes, I think that's possible. But I think we need to definitely have other guys be able to rush and do a good job in other areas, which, has kind of happened on our team.
Yeah, now that you're down to 2 healthy scholarship running backs, I mean, how does that affect or maybe change things potentially with how you approach things offensively?
Well, I don't think, you can change a lot. We've worked a couple other guys there for over a month now. Those guys are functional at the position. Probably look for somebody else on our team that maybe we could sort of develop into being a functional player from an emergency standpoint if we need them. But I don't really think that we can change right now. We certainly have to have a plan if we have any more issues at that position.
Hey, Coach, just sticking with running backs, just have you seen Trey Sanders progress, and how important is it going to be for him to step up now with Roydell out?
Well, I think it's, he's got a great opportunity. I thought he played well in the game. It was good to, get him some touches in the game. I think he understands the offense well, and I think he's a very capable guy. And, now that he's going to have a more significant role, it's time, for him to, take advantage of that opportunity as well. But we have every confidence that he can do that very well for us.
Hey, usually when Arkansas plays Alabama, Alabama's number 1. This year they're all the way down to number 2.
Do they played number 1?
Yeah. Arkansas's played number 1 twice in some seasons. Did they look any? They lost 3 Heisman finalists. I guess their quarterbacks. Do they look any different to you? Do they look a little more vulnerable?
No. Very, very talented. They have elite skill, big offensive and defensive linemen. They have an elite pass rusher, more than one. No, I mean they're Alabama. I mean they're when you turn on the film, they're what you expect to see. I mean you have to go out down there and play a really, really good football game and see what happens. But LSU played them close because LSU's got a lot of talent, and they're playing hard now. And physical, and that's how you beat Alabama. If not many people can, but you're going to have to get into a fist fight and see if you can come out ahead, and you're going to have to hang on to the ball. You have to play a really, really good game to have a chance, especially on the road against Alabama.
And then Stevens, he might be the number one offensive guy in the country. In a lot of people's minds, Anderson, number one defensive guy. What is Anderson doing to get all those sacks specifically, and what really impresses you about Young?
I really like what they do with him. They move him some, but they do a lot of what I call behind the center blitzes. So they'll take him all the way behind the center. They'll take him into the A gap. He has so much speed, so the tackle, this week our tackles really, really have to have a good week of practice, because if you set wide on him, it's over. He's going to come in, he's going to beat it. You don't have time to exchange the three technique. Back in the old days, threes used to run and then get contained. Now it's just straight up the field. Basically what they're trying to do is pick the tackle and not give the guard time to come off, and he's so fast. So it's not only that he's a great one-on-one rusher, which he is, but it's because of all the multiple things they do, knowing that he's a guy. They set him up real nice too, and of course everybody would if you had that kind of talent.
It really has been since like 2011 that most Arkansas teams going to Alabama and just got no chance. Do you feel the success you all have had maybe gives the team a little different attitude going into this game?
Well, we have a chance. The number one thing, and I know it might be considered coach speak or whatever, the number one thing you have to do to go beat a team is believe you can do it. And, if you've got a whole plane full of guys that are going, man, when's this game over? You don't have a chance, and we all probably in high school, or we all been on that team that goes, I wish we wouldn't have drawn this team. That's the number one thing. I'll go back to look at my first year here in 2013, and we got beat 50-0, I think, or something like that by Alabama, and then the next year we got beat by a point. Now, things happen and different things during the game, like all that. But the number one difference to me was we had a team full of guys that believed that they could win. And I think success of our program that we've had, however you view it, whether it's been a lot or a little bit or some or none, our kids, it's helped them confident-wise. They're going in there, hey, we've beaten some pretty good teams this year, and we know how good Alabama is, but it gives us confidence that we can go in there and play well.
All right, Shane, so that's all I got, buddy, on this episode. Jam-packed, a lot of content, great interview, and some leaked audio. This show had it all. You know what?
It did, man. Oh, I love it, man. SEC and the rumor mill.
Well, all right, buddy. It's a late one, so I'm going to cut it here, but I do appreciate you joining me as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for checking us out. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you guys. Go Vols.